In the history of our world, many sharks have been called monsters, but the largest and most terrifying of all was the Megalodon. This ancient apex predator was not something to be taken lightly. It was said to eat tons of food every day, and thankfully it went extinct, or did it? Some believe it might still be alive today. Here are 20 scary shark sightings that could just be a Megalodon. Number 20. Alfred Dean's catch. If you want to know the biggest great white shark ever caught, you need to go way back in time to Australia and look up a man by the name of Alfred Dean, because he would set a record of a catch for a great white that's not likely to be broken legally in this day and age. Alfred was a man who was almost adept at catching sharks, setting world records with almost every single fish. But then in 1955, he was able to catch a great white that was 2,264 pounds. Now that is one huge shark and 5 times the weight of some of the sharks I've talked about earlier. The funny thing though is that Dean swore he would be able to catch an even bigger one, and he definitely tried but was never able. And now, because of laws against catching great whites, no one else will ever likely be able to either. Number 19. Mariana Trench. Now let's take this from a different perspective. If the Megalodon was alive, why has nobody noticed it yet? Just think about it. It's a 60-foot-plus creature that's able to eat literal tons of food every single day. Don't you think someone would notice, especially if it was anywhere near the surface of the oceans or seas that they're allegedly supposed to be living in? But that's the trick, isn't it? What if they're not near the surface of the ocean? What if instead they're at the bottom? That's right. That's a theory of many scientists who believe in Megalodon's continued existence. They feel that the Megalodon has somehow evolved to be able to survive in the bottom depths of the ocean, with the most likely living spot being that of the Mariana Trench. This is a spot in the ocean that is deeper than Mount Everest is tall, and there's a lot about that spot in terms of life that nobody knows about. So in theory, yes, the Megalodon could actually live there. The problem with that though is that these are waters that are much colder than the ancient shark would be used to. As a result, it would have had to evolve very quickly to them, and furthermore, the amount of life down there might actually not be enough to sustain its massive appetite. No one will fully know until they've explored the trench, and that's not going to happen anytime soon. And yes, the movie The Meg was based off of this principle. Number 18. Tiger-shark controversy. Now we head to Australia for another story about yet another shark catch. This time it was the catch of a tiger shark. As noted earlier, tiger sharks are rather infamous for their aggressive nature in the water, and they're a true threat to humans if they're not careful, which shows that these fishermen either didn't know that or they just didn't care. This catch happened earlier this year, believe it or not, so thus the controversy is still nice and fresh. This tiger shark would be caught off the coast of Sydney by Dark Horse Captain Paul Barning and his crew. But that raises a question. Why is it so controversial? Was it illegal to go and catch this tiger shark? Well, no, not in Australia at the current time. By the laws of the land, they are allowed to have one tiger shark in their daily catch, and this was that one. So why were people all in a big huff about it? Well, that would be because tiger sharks are at the near-threatened place on the endangered species list, so every death affects those numbers. Lawrence Klebeck is a shark expert and someone who believes that killing sharks for sport is detrimental to the species as a whole, and says that people need to recognize these magnificent species for what they are and do everything they can to make sure they don't fall further into decline. Now, naturally, many don't agree with his views, and so the controversy continues. Number 17. The big catch. Here's a pop quiz. Can you go fishing for sharks? Well, technically yes, but it depends on the species and where you go to catch them, because there was a time when fishing for sharks was a pastime and a way of containing the threat, if you will. But as time went on and conservation became a much bigger deal in the world, shark fishing became much more restricted. That doesn't mean, however, that there still aren't a lot of interesting catches out there, such as one that happened in Cornwall where a man caught a 500-pound shark. His name was Dan Hawkins, and he was naturally quite happy with his catch. Dan said that it took hours to reel in the massive fish because it was huge and one of the biggest that he'd ever seen. Took 2 hours to reel it in, and he hopes that there will be bigger ones to come. The one that he caught was that of a porbeagle. Yes, that really is the name of a shark, porbeagle. They can grow up to 12 feet long and weigh up to 600 pounds. So Dan catching one like he did, even after a 2-hour battle, was quite the feat, of course. As warned before, porbeagles are now at risk of being endangered animals because of fishermen like Dan going after them with their rods and reels. Good job, Dan. It also should be noted that there's no chance in heck that a Megalodon would be caught by anything short of a massive harpoon, and that's if you're lucky. Number 16. Another big porbeagle. Now, if you want another tale from the UK about this specific breed of shark being caught, then I've got you covered. Just as important, this wasn't the biggest shark that was caught in the UK, but it was one that was caught just last month. Simon Davidson was the fisherman this time, and he was able to catch himself a 550-pound porbeagle that tipped the scales in his favor in terms of being a record breaker. He would fight for about an hour to reel in the porbeagle, a relative of the great white, and his body was, quote, battered by the ordeal. It took Simon along with 6 other guys not just to reel it in, but also to pin it against their boat so they could measure to see how big their catch honestly was. It measured almost 7 feet long, having a girth of 6 feet and giving it an estimated weight of 550 pounds, making it the biggest ever caught in British waters. After all that fighting, measuring, and whatnot, they then released the shark back into the waters like they should. Now it's time for today's topic. In August 2025, tourists flying a drone near the cliffs of Sagres, Portugal, were filming the Atlantic below when the camera caught something massive moving just beneath the surface. The footage shows a dark, elongated shadow gliding parallel to the rocky coastline, dwarfing 2 nearby fishing boats. As the drone zoomed in, the shape briefly rose toward the surface before vanishing into deeper water. Local fishermen later told reporters they felt a sudden pull on their nets minutes earlier, strong enough to snap the lines. Marine biologists from the University of Lisbon reviewed the video and ruled out whales due to the shape and movement, but stopped short of identification. Online, speculation exploded, with some claiming the shadow resembled extinct megafauna. Authorities later restricted drone flights in the area, citing ongoing marine monitoring. Number 15. Mexican Great White. What's better than getting a 500-plus pound porbeagle in the UK? Well, how about getting a 2,000-plus pound great white shark off the coast of Mexico? That's what happened, and I'm going to show you just how heavy that shark can be. When you add its weight to its 20-foot length, you get one of the largest great white sharks ever caught and recorded. And yes, that means that there have been even bigger ones out there, and that should terrify you to a certain extent. The irony for the fishermen, though, was that while it took a while to get the shark on their boat, it was already dead by the time it hit the surface. Oh, and another thing to note here, the fishermen then decided to take it to shore, and they had to tow it to make that happen. Why did they tow it instead of putting it on board? Well, that would have been very difficult given that their boat was only 22 feet long, meaning that the shark was almost as long as the boat itself. Once they got the shark to shore, though, it took the strength of 50 people to get it onto the sand, also that it could be measured and observed. What happened after that? Well, they chopped it up and handed out shark meat to everyone who was there, which makes me wish that I was there, because shark is surprisingly delicious. Number 14. Great white versus seal. One of the things that sets the great white sharks of the world out from certain other shark species is their ability to do whatever it takes to get their prey. They're even willing to launch themselves out into the air in order to catch prey, or catch them and then slam them into the water to stun them so that they can ensure their kill. The reason I bring this up is that there is some footage that was captured of a great white shooting out of the water and catching a seal in its teeth as it too launched out of the water and tried to get away but clearly failed. Now imagine a megalodon doing this with something of equal size. The visual would be truly haunting to anyone who witnessed it. Number 13. Drive-by shark. The next story is that of Jack Spear, who was on a small boat when a 30-foot shark decided to go right past him and his crew. Now at first they thought that it was a buoy, and then they thought it was a great white because it had a similarly pointed fin. Fortunately for everyone on the boat, it was just a harmless basking shark that primarily feeds on plankton. The shark went right under the boat, which is 23 feet, and it was easily 4 or 5 feet longer than the boat itself. Spear says that despite the fish's size, he wasn't worried because basking sharks don't even eat other fish, so nobody was really nervous. If it was actually a great white, it would have been a completely different story. Basking sharks are filter feeders, and indeed they don't harm humans, well, typically anyways, but still, it must have been a scary moment for the entire crew. Number 12. Japanese footage. How about a slightly more credible source? Japanese scientists apparently put some bait into a spot in a trench, presumably the Mariana Trench that I detailed earlier, and this footage would be shot as a result. As you can see, whatever this shark is, and I'm pretty sure we can all agree that it's a shark, it's pretty big and had no problems going after the bait and displaying its large size for the camera in multiple ways. But again, I have to ask, is this really a megalodon? More than likely not, for one simple reason. While it did look big, it didn't seem to be 60-plus feet in length. It also didn't seem as wide as it should be for a shark of that size. But since nobody really got a good shot of it, much like Bigfoot, we'll just have to keep wondering for now. Number 11. Swimming with sharks. To lighten up the mood a bit, I'll talk about something positive that can happen with sharks if you're in the right place at the right time. Going to Hawaii, a team of researchers were not only able to interact with sharks, they straight up got to go swimming with them, and that's a very cool thing no matter who you are. Ocean Ramsey, yes, that's her real name, is a marine biologist in Hawaii who swam with a great white shark that was over 20 feet in length, but apparently she had no reason to be nervous. Ramsey has said that sharks like that one that she swam next to swim past surfers and swimmers and divers all day every day. It's so rare that they never make a mistake apparently. Her and her team were out studying tiger sharks, which can be incredibly dangerous, when all of a sudden some great whites showed up and one in particular really got Ocean's attention. Could you just imagine if all shark encounters were like this? Ones that ended in joy and not in fear or the potential loss of a limb. Sadly, while what happened with Ramsey in the ocean is cool, you shouldn't try this with sharks near you unless you're absolutely sure about what they're going to do. Number 10. The Google Earth Find. Google Earth is by and large one of the most fun inventions that's ever been made in the internet era, because now people can go and look at the entire world from their computer screen and see things that they can't see on their own or without any kind of serious travel effort. But the other beauty of Google Earth is with the sky-high perspective, we can notice things in our world that nobody's ever seen before. This even was the basis of the Science Channel show What on Earth, which is likely what many people were saying when a Google Earth photo seemed to indicate that there was a Megalodon in the Persian Gulf. This happened during the later part of the year when scientists observed a picture of a coastline, and it seemed to show a shark that was over 70 feet in length. Megalodons are reported to have been about 60 feet, but getting close to 70 wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. So that just begs the question, was this really Megalodon that they saw? More than likely not. First of all, when you look at the location, if there was a Megalodon in those waters, don't you think someone would have noticed it by now? Furthermore, while Google Earth is a great tool, it sometimes has artifacts that mess with the images and make it seem like something's there when it really isn't, such as one time when a giant crab was off the coast of the UK. Striking but also false. Number 9. Encircled. Getting back to the talk about Megalodons, while you aren't likely to see them in our world these days, you might be picturing them in some way when you're facing a shark on its turf, because all sharks look big when they're circling you in the water, such as was the case with Matthew Smith, a man who went kayaking and was trying to just catch some fish when something else decided it wanted to try and catch him. Matthew stated that he looked next to himself and there was a shark gliding past. Just as troubling for someone else was Smith's friend who was watching him from a drone above, which is why we have the footage of the encounter. He couldn't help him and thus had to just watch in terror as things unfolded. Thankfully, Smith noticed the shark wasn't actually interested in him but the anchor to the kayak. He tossed it overboard and the shark eventually went away, allowing him to finally breathe and go get a change of pants. There was clearly a lot of danger in that moment, not the least of which was because if the shark really wanted to, it could have knocked over the kayak with no issue, and if it was a Megalodon, well, it would have eaten the entire boat and Matthew in one bite. Number 8. Scared straight shark. Now, if you really want to get an impression on just how scared people are of sharks, take a look at this clip from a Sydney, Australian news program as they were showing a clip from Shark Week that featured a massive great white shark lunging out of the water to get some prey. Given that the footage is from the Discovery Channel, you know that it's legitimate, and as a result, the massive shark was so huge that it literally scared the two hosts into silence, even swearing off going back into the waters of their homeland due to what might be waiting for them out there. It might be an appropriate reaction for some, and if Megalodon was alive and was caught coming out of the water like that, no one would likely ever go back into the ocean ever again. Number 7. Deep blue. The closest monster relative to the Megalodon is without a doubt the great white shark, not because they're related in genetic makeup, but rather their personalities are very much alike. They're both aggressive sharks willing to eat all kinds of food in order to get fed, and both have teeth that will cause you to fear even if you're not close to one. But the reason we're talking about the great whites here is because there are some who have felt that great whites might actually be Megalodons in disguise as they haven't fully grown up yet, such as with the Mexican great white known as deep blue. This is a shark that defies the typical size of a great white species. Despite the terror they cause, they actually average about 15 feet in length. But to be clear, they can grow much bigger than that and have multiple times been found to be growing over 20 feet, which is what deep blue is. This one is stated to be about 20 feet long and is also believed to not be done growing. So to those who don't know shark biology and history, it may just look like a Megalodon when it's out there swimming around in the waters. A shark conservationist working for Discovery's Shark Week would shoot some phenomenal footage of the massive creature off Mexico's Guadalupe Island in 2013, and it's pretty intimidating, especially when it gets up to the diver's cage. Now just imagine deep blue 3 times larger, and then you have a Megalodon-sized great white. She's got a lot of growing up to do in order to reach that size. Number 6. Whale shark. Despite all the talk about great white sharks and the Megalodon, if you're going to look for the biggest shark in our world currently, That would be the whale shark, and ironically it's not a mean shark like the other ones I've mentioned. The whale shark is one of 3 filter feeder sharks that get along great with humans, thankfully. This is not a story of one being captured and killed by some dopey fishermen, but rather one dying naturally and the fishermen doing what came natural to them, celebrating what they got after it washed up dead. It would then be measured, and it was a beast. The shark was 40 feet in length, weighing over 6 tons, and some even say that it was about 15,000 pounds, which would make it 7.5 tons. Then came the difficult part, getting it out of the water. They had to use 5, that's right, 5, cranes to hoist the whale shark out of the water, which is a true feat itself. They would later sell the meat for a whole ton of cash. Number 5. Coast Guard footage. Do you want to go back to a few more Megalodon sightings? Well, good, because I'll help you out with that. The next one comes from the Brazilian Coast Guard. They were doing a rescue and were filming the event as per their standards when something caught their eye in the water. Now, if you look at the top right-hand corner of the video, you'll see that something's actually moving underwater as the rescue commences. It's been measured as being about 60 feet in length, and it's been stated apparently by the Coast Guard that it was not a whale. As the footage spread online, viewers began slowing it down frame by frame, outlining the shadowy mass and debating its shape. Some claimed the movement looked too smooth and deliberate to be debris or a trick of light. Others pointed out how the water displaced around it seemed massive, as if something truly enormous was passing just beneath the surface. A few former sailors chimed in, saying they had seen similar shapes during night operations but never close enough to identify. Marine experts countered by suggesting it could be a pod of animals moving in tight formation, creating the illusion of one giant body. The lack of visible fins or a clear tail only deepened the mystery. Conspiracy theorists argued that the Coast Guard's quick dismissal raised more questions than answers. Skeptics noted that underwater currents and camera distortion can dramatically alter perceived size. Still, the idea that something that large went unnoticed for so long felt unsettling. The silence from any official follow-up only made the story grow louder online. So if that's to be believed, what was it that was in that water? Could it have been the Megalodon? And if it was, why didn't it go after people? They were right there. That's why many honestly think that it's all fake. But what about you? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Number 4. Washed up Megalodon. Now here's another case of a found Megalodon. Apparently in South Africa, where all sorts of sharks like to roam around, there was a body of a Megalodon that quite literally washed up on the beach, and there are even pictures of it. Naturally, when this was shown, many people were excited for a whole lot of reasons, and those people were a bunch of scientists and people who like to study this sort of thing, remarking that if confirmed, it was an amazing find that will be hailed as one of the most significant discoveries in recent history. As the images spread online, social media exploded with close-up analyses of teeth, fins, and sheer size. Some viewers pointed to the rough texture of the skin and the massive jawline as proof it couldn't belong to any known shark. Others quickly noticed inconsistencies in scale, comparing footprints, beach debris, and nearby rocks to estimate its true dimensions. A few marine biologists weighed in cautiously, noting that decomposition can drastically distort the appearance of large animals. There were also debates about lighting and perspective, suggesting the photos might exaggerate size far beyond reality. Rumors surfaced that local authorities had quietly removed the body before formal studies could be conducted. That only fueled conspiracy theories about cover-ups and suppressed discoveries. Meanwhile, skeptics argued it looked more like a basking shark or a large great white in an advanced state of decay. Past hoaxes were brought up as reminders of how easily excitement can outrun evidence. The lack of verified samples, measurements, or peer-reviewed reports became increasingly hard to ignore. To a certain extent, it would make sense that it could be in South Africa given the waters there and how rich that the life exists within them. But if it was found to be a real Megalodon, why haven't any of us heard more about it yet? Number 3. TikTok Megalodon. Now you should have known that social media was going to get involved eventually, because what better way to spread around speculation than to put it on something like TikTok? Musician Alex Albrecht captured the massive beast while at sea on a cruise ship in the Atlantic Ocean. He sailed 6 weeks in the Atlantic and saw the big shark. Now, as you can see in the video, you can understand why everyone was nervous, as it was indeed a big shark. As the clip spread, comments flooded in from armchair experts dissecting every frame. Some swore the dorsal fin looked too tall, others zoomed in on the tail beat, arguing over proportions. A few claimed the scale was distorted by the water and distance, making the animal seem larger than life. Meanwhile, Seasoned sailors chimed in about how calm seas can turn silhouettes into optical illusions. Alex himself admitted the moment felt surreal, watching the shadow glide alongside the ship for minutes. Passengers gathered along the rail, the mood swinging between excitement and quiet unease. Every slow pass of the shark reignited whispers, phones tracking its path across the blue. The lack of splashing or aggression only made it stranger, like the ocean was holding its breath. For many viewers, that eerie calm was the most unsettling part of the footage. It didn't look like a hunt. It looked like a presence, deliberate and unbothered. But was it Megalodon? Well, not likely. The body style isn't correct, and it likely would have gone after the boat instead of just lazily roaming around as the video shows. Still though, it's a compelling video, and Alex would gain 39 million views for it, so people were clearly impressed about what he shot. And because he was on the mast of the ship, he had a really good angle of it to boot. Number 2. The Greenland shark. Now you'd be forgiven for not knowing about the species known as the Greenland shark, because believe it or not, these are one of the larger shark species and one of the more ancient ones of the set. But why haven't you heard of them then? Well, as the name implies, it's a shark that tends to live in the Arctic waters near places like Greenland. Furthermore, they prefer to live in pretty deep down ocean depths, and as a result of this, they're not really a species that's easy to study, which obviously ticks off a lot of scientists. However, despite all the challenges that it takes to study these sharks, we do know a decent amount about them. For example, unlike many sharks, they don't exactly look the most threatening. Their bodies are bulky and not streamlined like many sharks, and furthermore their personalities are dubbed as lazy because they move so slowly in the waters they live in that they're dubbed sleeper sharks. But the twist here is that even though they're slow and technically blind, they're actually really good hunters. Another interesting fact is that they apparently live a super-duper long time, to the point where one of these sharks was stated to have somehow lived nearly 300 years. If the Megalodon had that kind of lifespan, it might actually still be alive today. Number 1. Navarre Great White. For some people, the act of just seeing a certain kind of shark is monumental, but then you go and catch one like a great white, and that's a moment in and of itself. This took place at Navarre Beach Pier and was the first great white to ever be caught in that area. The shark would be caught by Jeremy Utter, who fishes frequently at the pier, but even he wasn't exactly sure that it was going to happen to him. Though to be fair, it wasn't as big as some of the other sharks that I've talked about on my list, as it was measured only about 10 feet long and 700 pounds. The moment the line went tight, onlookers gathered, phones raised, sensing something different was happening. The shark's pale belly flashed just below the surface, confirming fears and excitement all at once. Pier regulars whispered guesses, some doubting it could really be a great white so close to shore. The fight drew on longer than expected, the shark making powerful runs that tested both gear and nerves. Each surge sent vibrations through the pier, a reminder of just how much muscle was on the other end of the line. People began calling friends and family, knowing this wasn't a story you tell alone. Even seasoned anglers fell quiet, watching history unfold plank by plank above the water. When the shark finally came into clear view, disbelief turned into stunned silence. No cheering, no shouting, just awe. Everyone there knew they were witnessing something that might never happen again in that place. Still though, that's an impressive catch, and the guy who worked at the pier was amazed by it as well, claiming that it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience that had left him speechless. But why were so many impressed by the catch? Well, the great whites weren't usually found in this part of Florida, with a worker saying that it's rare to see one, let alone catch one in those waters. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.